Well, hello there, it's me, Chase, and it's time, finally, to do my review of Ahsoka, the series. I was sitting here and I was thinking, yeah, I really just want to write right now, and I do. But I said I was going to finish, I was going to do the Ahsoka finale review or the final review of season one. I said it like a week ago, and it never came out. I was just like, stuff kept coming up, and I was like just tired. I just actually, for the first time today, I actually made some steak, and it was really good. Actually turned out pretty good. It wasn't all that bad at all. It was a little, chewy. I want to try and figure out how to make it more tender. So I'm gonna look into that. But hey, it came out pretty good. Turns out I'm not all that bad at cooking. So I was really proud of myself for how it turned out, and it did taste really good. I found this recipe. A friend of mine showed me this recipe for it. It's got some Italian herbs in it, some garlic powder, onion powder. And I found this smoked. Look, I love smoked anything. Oh man, pretty much anything smoked. And so I was looking for the ingredients and stuff like that, the seasonings, and I was looking for some black pepper, and then I found smoked black pepper, and I was like, what? I was like, oh, I'm going for that, man. I gotta try that. So, I mean, you don't really taste much of a difference, but it was pretty good. It turned out pretty good. Yeah, I really liked it. Hopefully, we're gonna really find out, I guess, if I get sick here in the next couple 20, 30 minutes or so. But if I cooked it well enough. I wasn't going on a timer. I was just going based off of what it looks like. It looked like, hey, it looks like it's cooked. So yeah, let's eat. So it was two, kind of not really big steak slices, but they were still good enough. All right. So anyways, all right. So the review. And by the way, I must have hurt myself. I am still dealing with a cough right now. I'm still coughing stuff up from being sick a couple weeks ago. Yeah, like, man, I must have really, like, it hurt myself a little bit doing some dips during a workout session last week. Because, man, right here, it's getting me good. And then when I cough, it hurts, So I'm kind of like just like and I hurt my wrist in the last workout on Monday. So I'm having to take it easy. No workout today. Probably not going to be Friday. I hate to do it, but this is what happens. I guess when you mess up when you're working out, you hurt yourself and you can't do anything. You can't work out. You gotta chill out, for a week or so, depending on the injury. I did get a good tricep workout though, and my triceps right now are just like, oh, they're rough right now. And they're I have to keep remembering to just stretch them out, and just keep that up. All right. Anyways, so enough of that. The Ahsoka review. I'm not gonna talk about much of the details except for a few little things. So let me just. I watched some people review it. I didn't watch the Nerdrotic reviews or the Critical Drink. I did actually watch the Critical Drinker review. And he didn't say it was just utter crap. He said that it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. All the stuff. But he did say some things that I agree with, which is that it's a show that is just kind of sad. It could have been much more. See, for me, it wasn't horrible. It wasn't a horrible show, but man, was it far from good. It was not great. It was just okay. There was just nothing in the series or in the show that made me just go, wow. I gotta, again, that kind of whole thing where, like, I gotta see what happens next. It just, man, I don't know. I feel like I'm not asking for much, but sometimes I guess you are in today's day and age. When I want a story blows me away, that just makes me just like, wow, my goodness, this is so incredible. I love these characters and I want to see what happens with these characters, and something that just, and then emotionally pulls at the heartstrings. Again, I look back at Arcane League of Legends. I'm telling you, you gotta watch that show if you haven't seen it already. It's a Netflix exclusive. It's an incredible show. Now, there's a little bit of a potential gay thing going on between Vi and this lady. Again, for me, I just the one, like, that to me is like the one bad part about the show, especially because I'm like, I don't understand why a Vi, who's kind of, a little, a very attractive butch, you might say, but I just don't understand why you have to make women who have a lot of masculine features, gay. I just don't. I know I've seen plenty of women who are tough, can fight, and still are women, like love to be a woman, and are attracted to dudes, and I just don't understand why you have to have the tough chick, the stereotypical tough chick who's also very gay, I just don't understand that. That's the one thing about that show that I just don't like. But anyways, point is that show, you got to watch that show. Other than that little thing, it's an incredible show. And the sad thing for me is that's an animated show. Okay, so that's not actual, like, real people playing characters. It's animation, and yet that conveyed so much more emotion than Ahsoka did. Again, my gripe, once again, over and over and over again, is why do these female characters, why are these modern writers so terrified of giving them some modicum of emotion? It is beside me completely why you do that. Ahsoka just keeps walking around and just in this kind of, like, she's just in this stoic, like, just emotionally not there kind of person. She's just, I don't know if it's Rosario Dawson, if it's her take on the character, or if it's the way the writers and the directors want her to portray the character, but she just keeps doing this sort of and I'm like sitting there, I'm like, all right, I've seen that a couple times. Okay, I get it, once or twice, but she's doing it constantly. She walks around like this, and she just kind of like she's just kind of walking around, and like she's just not thinking about anything in particular. And I'm just like, I mean, can we get a little bit more here? The body language of the character is just as important as the dialogue, which the dialogue in the shows wasn't all that great either. But that's just like all Ahsoka's doing. Sabine, there's a little bit more emotion, a little bit more, but not a ton of more. And I just got, look, the emotions, like I said, the emotions of the characters are extremely important in getting the audience invested. So remember what I was saying in the last review, when Ahsoka and Sabine are fighting for their life against Shin and her squadron of fighters who are trying to shoot them out in the outer space, just shoot them out of space basically, and kill them. Ahsoka and Sabine have, throughout the entire ordeal, are pretty calm and collected. There's no evidence of an adrenaline rush, even though in those situations, I mean, I would think one bad shot and you're done. And so you'd be kind of like, you'd be tense about that, just one bad move and you could be gone, So I would imagine the adrenaline would be pumping, you're probably sweating a lot, and you're breathing heavily, you're fighting to control your breathing because that's what adrenaline dumps do to you, and you're shaking, things like that. You're like, if the characters would give that kind of an emotion, it would get the audience more invested and it would feel more like, dude, our characters could die here, and how are they going to get out of this? But because the characters themselves don't convey any sense of urgency, the audience doesn't, no audience who's really, I would like to say, who knows what a good story is, I guess, I guess there's some, the your average, I don't know, but generally speaking, that's why it was one of the reasons why it's really important for your characters to have these emotions, to demonstrate that they're scared, they're panicking, things like that. If you don't do that, your character is just very robotic, and the audience, and I would say the majority of the audience just can't get into it. It's boring. It's not tense. There's no again, yeah. There's no tension. Of what could happen, this or thing. And so, but this is throughout the pretty much the entire show. There's just little emotional output. Now, so that being said, there's I got to talk about the scene with Ahsoka and Anakin. Ahsoka having this sort of flashback thingy with Anakin. I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's not really clear on what it's supposed to be. If Ahsoka's just unconscious from her fight with what's his face, Balin, who's an interesting character, by the way. I think his character is actually it's kind of sad when the villain characters are more interesting than the actual good guy characters. But that's what happens when that's what happens because the motives of the main characters is pretty obvious, and they don't convey any emotional investment in their motives. Like when Sabine finally finds Ezra, there's no she's just loses it, she just plays it cool, hey, I saw you the other day, kind of thing like that, and what's up, that's all it is. There's no the entire show is building up to Sabine, her world doesn't mean anything anymore without Ezra, kind of thing. And then she finally finds him again, and it's what's up? That's all it is. And I'm just what is happening here? There's no, like I said, so that just ruins everything. It ruins everything. Because once again, these writers don't want to show, for some reason, they don't want Sabine to be vulnerable in any way. They don't want her to go and just give him a big old hug and break down and cry, whatever. They just don't want to do that stuff. And look, if you don't do that stuff, people like me ain't gonna care. We're just not gonna care about your show. We're not. We're just. I hope they get a season 2 that they can maybe because look, let me be honest with you. The only reason the only characters I'm interested in this entire show is Balin and Shin. Those are the only characters I'm interested in. Because once again, like I was just saying, that what the main characters want, but there's this mysterious thing going on between Balin and Shin. Shin is clearly, at the end of this whole show, which leaves it on a pretty interesting cliffhanger. It's clear that they want to do more, but Shin it seems very obvious they want to do some interesting stuff with Shin and Balin. The rest of the characters, I don't really know. Again, I don't really, to be honest, I don't care too much about them. I'm more interested in what's going on with Shin and Balin. But again, that's kind of I don't know if they intended that, if they intended to do that, but that's what it ended up being. And I think that's not a good thing if that's the case. You don't want to unintentionally make the wrong characters more interesting than the main characters. It's okay to have these other characters interesting, but if they become more interesting than your actual main characters and their storyline and their character arcs, that's not a good thing. That's kind of bad. That means that is a big red flag that your story was poorly written. Just wasn't written well. It's anyways. But I gotta talk about the Ahsoka thing with Anakin. I didn't get it. I didn't get that scene at all. That whole thing. And I watched this one guy, and he just railed into it. He's just cursing up storms, just how stupid it was. Blah blah blah. I'm not gonna go that far as him, but he makes a good point. And the point essentially is, look, when you have a character who gets these moments where they have these defeat moments, right? Like Ahsoka apparently just had with Balin. There's nothing wrong with having them, sort of life flash before their eyes, kind of thing like that. Why am I doing all this? Feel a little bit defeated, right? And you just kind of start to look back at how you got to this point. Like that's what the character might do. Okay, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. The thing though is this whole flashback with Anakin is like about Ahsoka wanting to live or die. And then that like it's very clear like that's what they wanted to convey when she's forced to fight Anakin and he forces her to have to either live or die, and then she's like she does in this really corny way is able to get hold of his lightsaber, and then she's like holding it to his neck, and you see her go, "I choose to live," and I'm just going, okay, but the problem here is, first the delivery was a little corny, but the problem. I didn't have any indication throughout the show that Ahsoka was struggling with a nihilistic worldview, like at all. She was very driven, very focused on something, on a task, which was preventing Thrawn from coming back to the galaxy. So she was very driven. So that's not nihilism, but that's what this flashback seems to be. Again, the flashback is meant to explore, almost in symbolic manners, metaphorical manners, through dreams, a character's internal struggle. So that internal struggle needs to be recognized throughout the show. So I'm wondering if I should do this or not. Nah, I won't do it. I don't want to spoil too much of my story. But I will say that I do have my characters who are going to go through these character arcs. Like, let's do this, okay? One of my characters, he has sort of like a animosity towards wood elves. He doesn't really like them too much. There's a history about that, kind of thing like that. And then, so he's a little prejudiced against wood elves. And so what I'm going to do to balance him out, as it were, to remove that prejudice, is now he's going to work with wood elves. But see, you put them in those scenarios to force them to change, to make them have to change. So, but the point here is that you need to deliberately show the flaws in the character in order for them to go through the character arc, which in this case, think about the scripture. Okay, so Joseph, was it Joseph or no? It's Jacob. Jacob, he's not a good guy in scripture. He lies to his father. He steals his brother's birthright. He does a lot of bad things, and his actions cause his brother to hate him and want to kill him. And what Jacob does is he runs off. That makes things worse. So he runs away. He gets into this complicated family situation with this guy in order to get the guy's daughter, and then he gets the other daughter instead by accident. And then, he's just like, just having babies left and right with like 4 different women. But the point is that his cowardice has caused all kinds of problems, and his character arc is formed when he wrestles with God. Esau finds him, his brother Esau finds him, and he's now Jacob is freaking out because he's got this big old family and all this stuff, and he's afraid Esau is coming to kill him and just take everything from him and destroy his family, everything. And Jacob is still trying to scheme his way out of it. He's trying to run away from it, and it finally comes to a head when Jacob has to confront the realities of his past. And it's I don't want to say symbolized, but it's expressed in his wrestling with God. He finally comes to terms with things, and he finally once he wrestles with God, he goes through this great storm, as it were. Like, he has to go through it. He needs to stop running away, and he stops running away, and it causes him to have to wrestle with God. He has to go through the storm, and he comes out the other side, meets his brother, they reconcile, and things become better. I mean, it's not the end of the story, but things become better. And that's the whole point. That's his character arc. Like that moment where he wrestles with God. When you read the story, it's about Jacob. He's at his wit's end, and he finally stops running, and he comes directly to God. And people may mistake the scenario as Jacob demanding of God, that he bless him. That's not what's really going on. What's going on is Jacob he's no longer trying to swindle his way into I don't want to say favor with God, but taking what he wants or taking advantage of things. He is now desperate. He's begging God now. He's finally come to the point. He's come to his wit's end where he has nothing, and that's why you see him. You have to bless me. You have to bless me, like that. That. But that's his character arc, and so that expresses that moment, that huge clash, that climax expresses Jacob's great problem, which he needs to confront. And so in the show, you need to do that. If you're going to have Ahsoka have this dream where she's kind of battling this nihilism, you need to show that in the show. And there's none of that at all. And so the whole thing doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. That doesn't make any sense. So there's that. Okay. I have to talk about, so there's a point in the show where Balin's getting ready to go with this lady to go they're going to go shoot across from one galaxy to another to go find Thrawn, who's in the other galaxy, and then bring him back. They need the map thingy, the whatever, to I guess chart the course or whatever, and then go. Sabine has it. Sabine shows up and says, to let Ahsoka go, or she's gonna destroy the thing. She got a gun pointed to it, and she's gonna blow it up. Balin eventually convinces Sabine, says, "Hey, don't you want to see your friend Ezra again? Because Ezra's in the other galaxy too." And so if Sabine destroys this thing, she'll never see Ezra again. Balin convinces Sabine to hold on one second. This thing's bugging me. All right, Balin convinces Sabine to give up the thingy, and offers her the deal that, hey, you help me, I help you. I will help you find your friend if you give me that thing, and because then we can go find your friend together, right? And even though Ahsoka told Sabine to destroy it, you cannot let Thrawn come back home, even at the cost of never seeing Ezra again. Sounds reasonable, right? Sounds reasonable to me, okay? Now, where the show has the potential to become complicated in the good way, Sabine gives Balin the thing. And I'm watching this and I'm going, oh, wow, so Sabine made a huge mistake. She disobeyed her master. Well, they're not really master and apprentice right now, but the idea behind the show is that they're becoming close again, so that what's her face, Ahsoka, can teach Sabine and to make her apprentice again. That's the impression that they're getting. But now you have a moment where Sabine clearly disobeys Ahsoka, and so I'm like, ooh, okay. So these things are getting interesting now. How is Ahsoka going to react to that when she realizes that Sabine because Ahsoka got launched over the cliff by this point, so she doesn't know yet, but she finds out eventually. So I'm like, oh man, when Ahsoka finds out, how is that going to affect their relationship? Because they were just now rekindling their relationship, right? This is going to put a strain on it. And later on in the show, they meet up again, and Ahsoka basically goes, I understand your decision, and I stand by you. And I'm like, God, just, oh my gosh. I'm like, how can that is so Oh my gosh, like, let me just get this straight. Ahsoka, in the beginning of the show, is absolutely determined to not let Thrawn return to the galaxy. She's going to do whatever it takes and tell Sabine to destroy it, which, by the way, if Ahsoka was like, hey, you gotta destroy that little math thingy, because that's the key to finding Thrawn, why didn't she, when she found it in the first place, just destroy it right then and there? She knew what it was, so why didn't she just destroy it? If she wanted to destroy it eventually, she could have just destroyed it right there. So these are areas where it's just the plot doesn't make any sense. It's just kind of silly, you know. But I digress on that point. But so you're doing everything you possibly can. You tell your apprentice, potential apprentice, your not apprentice, to destroy this thing, because the consequences will be that Thrawn returns to the galaxy and establishes a new empire. And then your apprentice does the complete opposite. All because she puts the entire galaxy at risk. All because she just wanted to see her friend again. I mean, you talk about the most selfish decision a person can possibly make. And Sabine faces zero consequences for that. I mean, just absolutely nothing. She doesn't get lambasted by Ahsoka. I was like, dude, you gotta get Ahsoka back there. And Ahsoka just lays into the girl and just goes, it's because of you Thrawn has returned, and he does return to the galaxy. This is your fault. I knew it. Like, you should have had Ahsoka go, I knew that this is why you're not my apprentice. And that could have been like a great moment of just tension and flares and drama between the characters. And they just took that and went, nope, we're not doing this. We're just taking that and throwing it out the window, you know. I'm getting animated here because, dude, I mean, you talk about a blunder of the show. I mean, that just, oh my gosh. I cannot believe they did that. No consequences whatsoever. It's just, and that's one of the big problems of the show. There is like no conflict between the main characters. Ezra is just kind of this passive guy. He's just doing whatever everybody else says. Not very manly, not very masculine. Every single one of these characters, man. There's just no tension between any of them. I mean, there's a little sort of in the beginning with Ahsoka and Sabine, but it doesn't really mean much. There's no big fight. There's no emotion. Again, there's no emotions in their fights, anything like that. I'm just telling you right now. Your characters. This is another important element of story. Your characters have to have drama. There has to be tension between them. It makes the story interesting. This character wants to do this. This character wants to do that. Or maybe they want to do the same thing, but they want to do it in different ways. And that creates this drama, this tension. It creates interesting, complicated situations, like what could have happened in the Ahsoka show. I mean, imagine how cool, what the things you could have done with that. But no, they just ruined it. I mean, so like in my story, just want to just give you some examples. The characters in my story, I try to do my best to make sure they all have, and I'm talking about the main characters, the protagonists, that they have their motives, okay? And those motives cause them to work together. Sometimes, though, those motives cause them to work against each other. And that's an important element in storytelling. Characters that aren't always just yes men and yes women who just go along with what everybody else is doing. So there's I'm probably going to change this eventually, but right now in the story I'm currently writing, and I always mention this one because it's the one that's freshest on my mind. Anastasia, she's with Rollick, who's, she's an elf, he's not. They both come from two totally different worlds. And then Odin's with them, of course, and they're on his train, and they're trying to move through this area. And they become spotted, they become found out because they're also wanted. They're kind of wanted from the past nation that they were in. So they're trying to do it very secretively and incognito, and then they become found out by this these gangsters there. They're on the train and they're looking for him. And Rollick decides, goes, hey, we know that we know about their plot against us, that they're attempting to trap us. Let's use that against them. And Anastasia is like, screw that noise. I'm just gonna go and just attack these guys. Rollick wants them to just try to, as the gangsters are closing in on them, they can just climb up over the top and go over them, and then come on the other side and just detach the train cars that the gangsters are in. So that's what he wants to do. But Anastasia is just like, again, she's like, screw that noise, and ruins everything. And so what happens? Rollick sees it as an efficient way to lose those guys and still get the train, and go where they need to go and get there as fast as they possibly can, which is by train. Not because mine's in a steampunk world. You don't got jets, stuff like that in my world, so trains are usually the best way. So everything goes to crap because Anastasia lost her cool and just attacked them immediately, and the train derails and it crashes and burns. People die, and Rollick is very, very upset. But see, again, at that point you have a choice. Could Rollick have just gone, like, what would happen if just Rollick's like, hey guys, this is what we should do. We should do this. We can still get the train. We gotta keep cool here. And then somebody doesn't keep their cool. The train is derailed. Now you don't have a train anymore. You barely survived. Other people died. And you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere in the cold. And now you're just fighting to survive because there's nobody out there. You're out in the middle of nowhere. So what if, like, after all of that, Rollick just goes, yeah, and Anna goes, oh, that was my bad. And Rollick just goes, I understand. And I whatever decisions you make, I'm with you. I mean, just like, what? How stupid is that? He was literally just, that completely contradicts his character and what he was just saying a moment ago. A moment ago, he was saying, let's not kill the train, let's take the train. And then the train gets blown up, and he goes, you know what, that was okay, we didn't need it anyway. No, that's not what happens. Rollick gets pissed, and he yells at Anna. He yells at Bastilina, who's part of the problem of why the train's derails. They get in a big old fight, not a physical fight, but they start shouting at each other, start screaming at each other, and Rollick's just losing his cool. And throughout the book, Rollick is like trying to get everybody to like chill and make some rational choices for once. Anna's kind of like not doing that. She's kind of sidetracked. And it's like Rollick's the one who's got a cool head. And it's Anna who later on has to realize, I'm just not in my world here. This guy Rollick, this is where he lives. And he understands how this world works. And I had to bite the bullet. Because doing things the way I've been trying to do them has just gotten me in more trouble. And he seems to know what he's doing. And so she finally decides to just buck up and listen to what he's trying to tell her and make some better decisions. But still, that's not even the only example. There's other examples in the book about characters who, Stratos with Danetta, and also Urkadesh. Urkadesh is like constantly hiding his intentions, but from everybody else. And he intentionally leads his own people into traps in order for him to exploit something. But he leads them into danger and lets them fall into dangerous situations intentionally and leaves out information from them, things like that. And these characters don't just like roll over and go, well, I'm sure it's all just fine. Stratos eventually comes around and starts thinking, this guy seems to know what he's doing. I'm not saying I like the way he does it, but hey, he knows what he's doing and we're getting results. But that's eventually later on. But he doesn't just roll over and just go, yeah, it's okay. It's all good. He's angry. He's upset because, some of these people that Urkadesh is setting up are his friends. And so he's like, hey, that's not cool. I don't appreciate you doing that. And Node, who's the brother of Crosser in the book, both of them are led into a trap by Urkadesh. I'm spoiling like everything to you. But, he doesn't appreciate it. And he lets Urkadesh know he doesn't appreciate what he did. He's like, I just hope you understand. Like, I don't like you. And I don't appreciate you. And this is drama that's really key in the story. It's character development, and that's one of the things in this show that is like so lacking is character development. Like I told you in when I reviewed the second, I think, and third episode, there's a moment they land on the planet. They barely get away from Shin, and they got systems damaged and like that. And Shin's out there looking for them. Apparently, doesn't have radar in the futuristic world of Star Wars. But they hide in the trees, and they have to turn off all systems basically, I guess, to avoid detection. And it's just Sabine and Ahsoka just sitting there, and I'm like, oh, this is a perfect moment for some character development. Nope, nope. We're not gonna do it. It's like Dave Filoni, who's I guess was the main writer of the Star Wars Clone Wars show and the Rebels, which is where these characters come from. It's like he was just expecting you to know everything about these characters, enough about them to where like you didn't need to really do any character development. The problem is a lot of people who were watching the Ahsoka show didn't actually watch Clone Wars and all stuff, including this guy. So that's the problem with that. So you got to do some kind of character development here. And that was like a perfect moment to do it, and he didn't do it. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. Yeah, like I said, it's sad because the show it has that potential to be good, to be a good show, and they just floundered it. They just didn't do a good job. Character development was bad. The writing was bad. The dialogue, plot issues left and right. Thrawn. I read the first Thrawn book. Okay, the Thrawn in that book. I take a lot of inspiration from him when I make the character Urkadesh. Urkadesh is very tactical. He's a very strategic kind of guy. He just knows how to think ahead. He's just a perceptive guy. He's got this deductive ability that you're going to see, especially in the third book I'm writing. He's just an incredibly perceptive guy. He's very smart. He's also very physically and magiologically powerful, but he rarely ever needs to use that because he just beats his enemies by just outsmarting them. So you're gonna see a lot of that, and I'm just having so much fun writing this character. Just like you're gonna get to see him solve a case, as it were, and like you just watch him put things together that everybody else goes like, why? I didn't even think about that. How is this guy able to do this? Like, that's what I'm hoping is going to be the case with the character. But a lot of it comes from when I read that book, the Thrawn book. So Urkadesh also is very analytical. He watches the body language of everybody, which is what Thrawn would do. Thrawn would watch the body language, and in the book, it gives you the insight into Thrawn's thinking as he's carefully analyzing every little muscle movements of the person he's talking to. And Thrawn, what he's doing is he is considering this person, and he's seeing if there are threats or not. But throughout the book, Thrawn is like this. You see Thrawn for the tactical genius that he is, and it's awesome. It's that's what made him my favorite Star Wars character of any character in the entire Star Wars universe. The Thrawn in this show is just a shell of that. He's not completely stupid, but it's like, again, Dave Filoni just seems to think that you make Thrawn smart by just things happening, and then Thrawn just expected it to happen that way, And there's examples, I can't think of them right now, but where that kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But yeah, somehow Thrawn was like, yeah, this is what I meant for that to happen. This Thrawn is kind of like when, you just do something really cool by accident, and then you just go, well, I did that on purpose. That's kind of like what this Thrawn is like. That's not somebody who is really thinking ahead. It just shows that these guys, these writers, aren't very creative when they're writing. um, the kind of character that Thrawn is requires a very creative writer's mind, um, and we just didn't get any of that. I didn't have any moments here. Like when I'm reading the Thrawn book, you're just constantly going, "What is this dude up to? What is Thrawn up to?" Yeah, it looks like he's lost control of the situation, but I know he hasn't. He's got something. He's way ahead of his enemies. They just don't even know it yet. And then boom, there it was, and you're like, "Oh man, that was cool." And it just makes you like his character a lot, because you need to understand in the books, it's very important you understand, because like the show Rebels and then this show portray Thrawn as like this evil, wicked menace guy. You know, he's like the Emperor 2.0, but that's not who Thrawn is. He's actually a much more complicated character than that. He's not a kind of there's parts in the show where Thrawn deliberately throws away stormtrooper soldiers and stuff like that, and I'm like, that's not something Thrawn would do. Thrawn actually cares about his those under his control, under his command. He actually cares about them. He takes responsibility for their lives, and a lot of what he does is his strategy is centered around preserving as many of his, as it were, his pieces as possible, his resources, and that includes his own soldiers. And so that's important to know, because it shows that he's not a bad guy. He is an antagonist in the sense that he's going against Ahsoka and the main characters of that, but he's not a bad guy. You know, he's not evil like the Emperor. He has different motives than the Emperor does. So his motives really are his own people, to save them basically and protect them. Anyways, all that to basically say, he's actually a much more complicated character than the show portrays him. And that's, again, another one of the things that's just kind of sad about the whole thing. Thrawn is one of my favorite characters, and I already knew. I was like, yeah, they're not going to do a good job with Thrawn. You just need the kind of a certain kind of writer to pull Thrawn off. And I just, from what I've seen in Star Wars and just in Disney in general, they don't got those kind of writers who can do that kind of stuff. I'm hoping that what I can do is what I've read in the Thrawn book, take as much inspiration from that as I can, and make my own Thrawn character, Urkadesh, and make him impressive and as interesting too. Again, you're gonna see things in the third book where you really see him go to work. You're gonna be like, my hope and my plan is that you're gonna like just see this guy and go, man, this dude is just on his A game. Like nobody can outsmart this guy. This guy's just, and also like, because Urkadesh's ability, I don't want Urkadesh to be just like he sees everything happening, like everything coming. Again, we're like, I meant that for that to happen. Well, I meant for that to happen too. Oh, and that, like I don't think anybody can really do that meticulously, like whatever. But he's also what I want Urkadesh to be is, he may not see everything coming, but what makes him dangerous is whatever comes his way, he just knows how to take advantage of it, and turn it to his. For him, like to use it for his own usefulness. Like that's what makes him dangerous, is he adapts to changing situations and circumstances. But let me just give you a quick example here. I'll try to give an example of the brilliance of Thrawn in the book. So when he first joins the Empire, he's not like a Grand Admiral, right? But he does have combat experience and command experience. So when he joins the Empire, he kind of gets to skip the cadet level and go kind of towards he's sort of like an ensign or a cadet and a lieutenant, kind of like he has this vague rank that no one really, that's never happened before. The Emperor does that personally. The Emperor sees a potential in Thrawn, and gives Thrawn these privileges based on Thrawn's own experience. And so when Thrawn is meeting the captain guy, whatever, who doesn't like Thrawn, the guy gives Thrawn a lieutenant's insignia in the book. Gives Thrawn a lieutenant's insignia, and immediately upon exiting the office with Thrawn's translator, who's like his sort of right-hand man in the book, Vanto. Thrawn starts probing Vanto, starts asking questions about why he was given this and what could it mean. And they just have this like pretty lengthy conversation where Thrawn's just asking all these questions. And you might be thinking for a moment, you're like, what is the point of all these questions? But what Thrawn is doing is he is analyzing what is the potential threats and the potential strategy and the reason for this. And basically, the lieutenant or that supervisor guy, I forgot his title, or whatever, but it's been a while since I read the book. But he basically gave that to Thrawn in order to cause jealousy among the other cadets that then would target Thrawn, basically. And so Thrawn is going through these scenarios with Vanto about what this could mean, and he's doing that so he can understand what he's potentially facing in the academy. So he's like staying one step ahead of everybody, and that's what he's doing. So later on, a couple chapters later, Vanto and Thrawn are invited by these two cadets, as it were, to play a game of cards in like this restricted area where they could all, if they all get caught, there, they could all be like seriously reprimanded. And the whole purpose of these guys doing this is to try and trap Thrawn. And they have another supervisor guy who's like in on the whole thing, but Thrawn doesn't know this. However, you see Thrawn, when they're invited, Vanto's basically going, it's an obvious trap. But Thrawn's like, let's go play. Let's go. And so Vanto's like, oh man, we're screwed. And so they go and they're basically, they're getting ready to play. And you see more of an insight into Thrawn's thinking and his strategy. But basically what happens is, I can't go through the whole thing, but they're getting ready to set the trap on Thrawn, as it were. And so Thrawn basically tells them, do you want to play this? Do you want to do this deal here? Like to make this card game go? And like they're like, no, we want to do it. That's basically what's going on. And Thrawn goes, as you wish. And what Thrawn does, he doesn't have the lieutenant's insignia on yet. He has it in his pocket. He takes it out. He's like, one moment, please, before you do it. He takes out the insignia, puts it on his uniform, and both the cadet characters like they freak out, like, oh, he's a lieutenant? I thought he was just a cadet. And then that's when the supervisor guy walks in, and he was intended to walk in to try and bust Thrawn, as it were. But that's when he walks in and then sees the lieutenant insignia. And when he sees it, he panics because, he's a lieutenant. You can't, he's ranked above everybody in here. And Thrawn uses that insignia right then and there. And it's explained later when Thrawn's talking to Vanto about the whole thing, that Thrawn was like, I knew what they were up to. The real challenge was, pulling out the lieutenant's insignia too soon or too late. He had to pull it out at the right time, and he did. He pulled it out at the right time. He said, if I pulled it out too soon, then the two cadets could have like warded off their commander buddy, their supervisor buddy. If I did it too late, then obviously we would have been busted. So he had to do it at the right time, and he does it at the right time. But he's telling Vanto he knew the whole time. He knew the whole time what they were up to, and he was one step ahead of them. That's the Thrawn in those books, in the Thrawn books. There's more than one, but in that book, that's Thrawn, just a tactical genius. He is already one step ahead of everybody. And now, if you watch the show, ask yourself if that's the same Thrawn. And I'm like, that's not the same Thrawn. It's a totally different Thrawn. So again, there you go. But all right, so that's my review of the Ahsoka show. I give it probably a 4 out of 10, maybe a 5 if I'm being generous. But it just had so much going on that was just not good. Just missed opportunities. One of the big glaring ones was the Sabine and Ahsoka thing, where just like Ahsoka's like, we must do everything we can to stop Thrawn, and then Thrawn returns, and because Sabine gave up the map thingy, and Ahsoka's just like, it's all good. You and I are. By the way, Ahsoka and Sabine at the end of the show get stuck in the other galaxy, while Thrawn goes back to their galaxy. And so like Ahsoka and Sabine, I don't know if they're just like, you know what? I don't know if they're just thinking, well, you know what? We're in another galaxy. There's not going to be a new empire here, so that's their problem now. I don't know if that's what's going on or whatever, but just Ahsoka's just like totally in bliss, like pretty much throughout the most of the show. She's like blissed, and that's just not good. It's not good. All right, so there you go. That's my review. I hope it's interesting and helpful to you guys, or useful, whatever. I will talk to you all when I see you.